You haven't started broadcasting, but at least you got your fix.
Yeah, I did. Yes, I started now, so we are
Oh,
live.
all right.
Yeah,
Happy July 4th. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Welcome to
yeah.
A Nice Place to Brew. I'm Jason.
And I am George.
Happy July 4th, episode 35. How are you today, George?
Is it episode 35? Wow.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good
Yep.
for us.
Yep.
So
We got a lot
I'm
of
doing good.
good. Good.
Yeah.
It is it's 2019. It is a Thursday this Independence Day. So we've got a nice day off right in the middle of the week, and with work days on either side, at least for me. George, I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it's that way
No,
for you.
me too. Yeah. My
Yeah.
colleagues in Europe were giving me a hard time about working on Friday, but I was like, most everybody takes off, so it's going to be a slow day for me,
It,
So
it will be a slow day. For me, we're closing the month of June, so there's not much of a break to be had. Wasn't
oh, good
as
Lord.
much of an option as some other environments, but it's part of the job. So
Yeah.
anyways, a couple housekeeping items. Check out our website at www.aniceplacetobrew.com. Our social media links. We are on Facebook at Nice Place to Brew and Instagram at A Nice Place to Brew. Check us out. Our episodes are available via iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and I've got one comment to make about iTunes, which I checked out right
Okay.
before as I was preparing last night for today's episode. Our review section is still blank. Shout out to our listeners. Yes, it's still blank.
Lazy listeners.
Yeah, exactly. Come on. Come on. So I implore our listeners, please go on to iTunes, write us a review. It makes a big difference for the show, and we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I found one possible cause for why our review section may be blank at the moment.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So this is interesting. So I looked up our Nice Place to Brew page on iTunes, and I saw a little icon on the left-hand side of the screen, and that icon read clean lyrics. So I don't know who the judges are or who puts this tag onto certain podcasts across iTunes. I don't know if it's somebody through Apple or somebody who's completely separate. I have no idea. But I can't help but think, is there a link between the fact that we've been labeled as clean as to why we don't quite have enough quote unquote controversy to possibly mandate more review activity? I don't know. So I cross-referenced this with a podcast that I listen to regularly. I went to their page, and of course they've got the icon that says parental advisory because they swear all the time. So George, here's some food for thought. Do we need to have an episode that just goes completely off the rails, that we're dropping 4-letter words every other word? Is that what we need to shake this clean logo?
I mean, it's possible, but I feel like that would be a departure from what we do. So, I mean, we've dropped the occasional swear word. We don't
It's rare.
Go out of our way to do it, but we don't, avoid it either. So,
right,
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be a departure. You're right about that. So maybe we can rebrand ourselves as the Extreme Homebrewing Podcast. How do you like that?
Sure, why not? Yeah. Good Lord. Oh man.
Anyway,
somebody go and leave a review to make him happy. Anyway,
yes, please do. I'll drop this subject as soon as we get some review activity. Please do.
Anyway, so on this 4th of July, it is noon my time.
Yes.
It is still technically morning for Jason. So if for your brunch podcast, are you drinking anything today?
I have here in a glass, I have the beer that I had labeled as the Belgian Triple, which clearly is not. I think we talked about this on the last episode. This brew day did not go as planned. What I have in my hands, I will infer and say that this is a Belgian double.
Okay.
I'm submitting this for a competition on Sunday of this weekend. I know my scores are going to not be positive, but at the same time, I guess a couple of things. Number one, I believe in participation in club competitions. Our brew club, the Joliet Brewers Guild, it does a good job of putting out competitions as at the very least for frameworks for what us homebrewers can put together and get some valuable critiques on what we're working on. I believe in that and I choose to participate, even if my product is not, you know, as I originally had created. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. Second of all, I'm not quite sure what the proper style is for this beer, and I quietly think I may get a piece of feedback that may color that in a little bit for me.
Well,
So
it's basically a triple, just not as heavy on the alcohol, right? Like you missed the mark on your gravity a little bit, right?
quite significantly, but if I'll put this up to the camera, you'll see the color is noticeably off from a Belgian triple as well. Here, check it out.
Well, that is a little bit lighter than it should be, isn't it?
Yeah, I need to. I could look up the grain bill and get a better picture of that. But Belgian triple is supposed to be a lot lighter than that, so it's not a Belgian triple. I fully acknowledge that.
Yeah,
But
I
then the
mean,
question becomes, what exactly is it?
that is a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm prepared to present this as a Belgian double, but that may even be incorrect. I'll
Hmm.
I'll leave that one to the judges.
Well, the good news for you is, wasn't the competition a sessionable competition? Like they wanted session beers?
Yes, the name of the competition is sort of sessionable, so they're leaving it intentionally a little bit open.
Okay.
So I think I've got at least some room to possibly get some not so harsh feedback, but even so, I'm prepared for what's headed my way.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah. Me, I'm trying to create some keg space here, so I'm trying to
Okay.
finish up my saison that I made a little while ago.
Okay. All
I
right.
think I've got about gallon and a half left in there.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna bottle it up, and then I've got in my fermentation chamber a what is that? It's a English mild that I've added licorice root to that I did in a vodka tincture.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that's in secondary right now, and it should be ready for kegging this weekend. So I'm getting that ready.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I just happen to have 4 kegs here at the house. When you talk about keg space, I have 4 kegs here at the house, and all of them are full.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And guess how much room I have in my new trusty chest freezer that I just acquired on Sunday?
Can you fit 4 in there?
I can.
Oh
It,
wow.
it's a.
Okay,
I
that's
tell you,
bigger than mine.
it's a tight fit, but it can be done.
Okay.
And once I build the collar for it, I'm going to have enough room for the CO2 tank to sit off on the side.
Okay.
I tell you, I keep getting more excited about this.
Are you
Like,
keep Are you keeping your CO2 tank outside of the Keyser?
so there's 2 different schools of thought on that, and I've read them both.
Okay.
I am prepared to go the direction of keeping the CO2 tank inside of the freezer.
Okay. I went the other direction. I
You did.
drilled a hole
Okay.
through and fed the CO2 line through the collar, and attached my manifold to the inside of the collar.
So, what was your rationale for that? Why did you see that as a better option than leaving it in?
So one of the annoying parts of the CO2 tank, when I had it inside of my old Keyser, was that the cold temperature screws up the readings on the regulator.
So you'd have
The
that
reg-
condensation all over it.
well, that and the regulator, the to show the right readings on it is calibrated for like 70 degrees.
Oh, to see
So
how much you have left.
right, to see how
Oh,
much I have
okay.
left
Okay.
and
All
things
right. All
like
right.
that.
All right.
So when it was inside of my Keyser, it always showed low.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a dumb thing, but you know, it's you want to be able to look at it and have a reliable reading of how much CO2 you have left. Do I need to replace it before I do this next keg? You
Mhm.
know, and am I going to run out when I have, 30 people coming over for a party and I'm trying to pull off the keg, that kind of thing. So,
Good point.
yeah.
That is a good point. My rationale right now for leaving it in is the chest freezer itself is situated where it has this half step up towards the corner,
Hmm.
which is like a perfect stand for a CO2 tank.
Sure.
And right now, the CO2 tank with the regulator is too tall to sit upright in the freezer without the door closing on it and preventing the door from actually closing. But with the collar, there's going to be plenty of room.
Sure.
So I'm like, this seems far too easy to pass up. Not to
I'm with
mention,
you.
and I'm not proud of this, but my um, level gauge on my regulator is not working anyways. So even if I did do the work to keep the CO2 tank out of the freezer, I still wouldn't have an accurate read on how much CO2 I have anyways.
Are you still using that broke ass
Yes.
regulator? Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to
Listen,
bite the bullet,
it does the job.
spend $50 and get a new one, man.
Listen, if it ain't broke, well, okay, all right.
Well, it is
That
broke.
can be, yeah. Listen, it still carbonates my kegs, okay?
It does, I guess. Yeah. All right.
Oh man. All right.
So,
Now I'm embarrassed. I just announce to our audience how cheap I am.
oh man. So, but I will say, you know, I understand where you're coming from, and I'll tell you my other motivation is once I stop being cheap and invest in one, I want to get a 1 or 2 gallon keg that to have inside of it on that half step up. So I'm reserving that space for that. And so I can do either sodas and like root beer or things, or have pressurized water or sanitized water. I'm not sure what I want to do, but
I so want one of those too. I
yeah.
so want one of those. I can't get over how damn expensive they are.
They truly are, but it's a one-time purchase, and I think I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and do it because I really want to do small batch sodas, and you know, you can even put mead in there. But if I do that, and even if I do sodas, I'm gonna need to expand my regulator and have two settable pressures because it's going to have to be either way. It's going to have to be a different pressure than the beer that I have in there. And right now, the regulator I have goes into a manifold, so everything that's in there has to be at the same pressure. So I'm going to have to run a second line.
I've seen those regulators that split off in multiple directions, but I don't know if I've seen one that allows you to build different pressure points.
The one you have will do that, but you can you twist off the how much is left in the tank gauge, and you put another dial gauge on in that, and then you twist it on at the end, how much is in the tank gauge, and you can do two. You can expand them basically.
And so I never knew that. This is eye-opening to me.
Yeah, so I mean, so that is a non-trivial thing because then I'm gonna have to run another CO2 line. I'm gonna have to drill another hole in things, and this is all. So I mean, and getting those gauges off, they're on there real good. They're on there, basically machined on there and everything.
Right.
So it's a gigantic pain to get them off, but they're
not designed to come off.
No, and they're not. I mean, they're designed to be real tight so they don't leak and everything. So I totally get that. But yeah.
That's interesting. I got to read up more on that. I mean, what you're saying makes perfect sense. I can kind of visualize it. I'd like to see a picture of it.
Yeah. So the only downside to that is you either need another manifold if you want to go to multiple kegs, or you run a line in. You can only go to one keg at that point with your second connection. So, but because I want to be able to do two different pressures, I'll basically have a high pressure and a low pressure, or pressure A, pressure B, whatever it comes out to. Connection going into the keezer.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be a great project.
Yeah. So.
So we've got a topic for today's show. We're going to talk about something that we haven't done before. We're going to do a segment called Other Breweries Reviewed. This is a takeoff on our Other Brews Reviewed. We're going to expand this a little bit, and that's going to be the topic for today's show. I've got 3 different breweries to review. George, how many do you have, sir?
I had two. I can probably think of a third one though if I
Okay.
put my mind to it.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's dive into this. So,
Do we want to take a second and talk about kind of what our criteria is before we start?
I was right about to dive into that. So,
Oh,
yes,
yeah. Go ahead then.
yes. Okay. So, we talking about other breweries is not a new concept for this show. I mean, it seems to fall in line with our conversations about other brews reviewed often, because oftentimes the other brews reviewed, we um, build our experience from actually being in the brewery, sitting down, having a beer, and kind of getting an overall experience from that. But in the past, our conversation has been mostly limited to the quality of the beer, and we're going to go beyond that with today's topic. I built mine on 4 different pieces of criteria. George's might be a little bit different, but I think for the most part, we're going to paint a pretty similar picture with our picture of these breweries.
Mm-hmm.
So I did mine by 4 different categories. Number 1 is beer quality, because let's face it, you're coming there to enjoy beer. Your beer
Gotta have a
quality.
good product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second point is the staff. Is the staff friendly? Is the staff helpful, or do they not paint the place to be what they set out to be? Third, overall environment. Do you enjoy the overall setting, or is something about it a little bit off-putting? And then the fourth one, and I think is going to build some good dialogue for today's episode, is viability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think viability is going to be a more relevant topic within the next 2 years in the overall craft beer industry. So, George, did yours was your criteria a lot different?
No, basically along the same lines. Basically, is the beer good? Do you want to go there? And do I see it sticking around in the next couple years? And as part of viability, kind of having a little bit of an outlook towards financial solvency, and it's a little bit of a guess. There's some information out there, but basically, you know, even the best businesses, if they are not funded, they are not going to survive, or they're going to have to like be bought out or what have you.
Right.
So that kind of goes along with viability, but I think that it's an important part when because at the end of the day, a brewery is a business as much as we want it to be an art form and an art studio, which it is. It's also a business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said. All right, you want to go? You want to start us off?
No, I'd
You
like
know
you
what?
to.
Actually,
Yeah.
I've got 3 that might be easier if I start off. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Well, I have a fitting first brewery to review. Being that today is July 4th, is Independence Day, I recently got back from a road trip that took me through most of the Southeast. I went through Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then back the other direction through Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois. So it turned out to be a great trip. A lot of miles covered. I did get to visit a number of breweries, have a couple of flights, and have a couple experiences. And today, July 4th, seems very fitting to be reviewing this beer, or not this beer. I'm sorry, this brewery. The first brewery I'm going to review is called Service Brewing out of Savannah, Georgia, which was my last destination on my road trip. Savannah, for those of you who don't know, is a resort destination that sits on the Atlantic coastline in Georgia. It was my first time in Savannah. For anybody who has not gone, I highly recommend it. Savannah is a beautiful city. There's so much to offer for a visit. The craft beer is excellent. The setting is excellent. Everything about it. It's really a fantastic place to go. Anyways, Service Brewing, and back to my point about why this is appropriate for July 4th, because Service Brewing is veteran owned and veteran brewed. So
Okay.
people with military experience came back, was done with their tours of duty. Whether they're still active military or not, I'm not 100% certain. But nevertheless, they are now running a brewery there in Savannah, which is a great story. And my review of this brewery is largely positive. This place had a lot of good things going on. We visited this brewery on an afternoon on a Saturday, and this was a pretty spacious area of a kind of a warehouse location that sat right along the water of Savannah. The inside was pretty spacious. They had several kind of picnic style tables where you could sit at. They had a large um, bar top area where you could also sit. They had games, and I mean overall the place was very friendly, very warm, and I'll just go through the criteria just based on the numbers I went through. I rated everything as a 1 through 5, so I'll kind of build my reviews on that. My first point is beer quality. On a scale of 1 to 5, I gave this a 3.5, and this place had about 12 or 13 different beer offerings there on site. I had 2 flights between me and my girlfriend Candelaria, so we got to kind of taste off of each glass. Um, and all the beers I would say were good. The ones that were particularly good, a double IPA was on tap that I thought stood out. There was another regular IPA and several different light-bodied beers that were just kind of all right, all right. Going down to staff, the staff was excellent. The team that was manning the bar and also the tables, top notch. Very very friendly, very knowledgeable. The overall and tying this directly with the overall environment, I gave the environment a 5 as well. It was an enjoyable place to go. It was like the perfect time to be there too. There was people around, but it was by no means overcrowded. Place was clean. It was definitely a place that you felt comfortable sitting down and enjoying the product. And then going down to D, viability. Um, I gave this one a little bit of a lower marking, and I'm a little bit sad to say that, but hear me out here. I don't believe this is a brewery that has a great level of distribution, if any. I did not see any packaged beers for sale there. I may be wrong about that point, but I just didn't see anything.
Mm.
Um, I do feel like breweries of this type are going to be the first ones to be challenged as the market changes over the next 2 to 3 years.
So
And go
that's
ahead.
a let's just pause there for a second. So the tap house breweries, ones with no distribution, with no some of them have no intention of
That's
distributing.
that's true. That's true.
Do we see that as a net negative, or is there a place for them?
I think there is a place for that, but I think as the market turns, I think the competition is going to be so stiff for those types of breweries that there's just not going to be room for all of the breweries that have opened up in the last 5 years.
Okay. Okay.
So is it a net negative? Not really, but it's going to put you in a more difficult category, I
Right.
believe.
Okay, and that's fair. All right. So
Yeah.
you were on about viability.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it ends for me. That was the last point that I was going to illustrate about just where those types of breweries will land as the marketplace changes. Whether or not they decide to distribute or not is perfectly fine either way. There's a place for those breweries, but you know there's probably going to prove to be too many breweries over time for that type of taste as the market taste changes. That's really my final
Sure.
point on that. I mean, I feel bad saying that because there was so much good about this place. It's a great story. It's a great place to be. I see breweries like that, and and I can't help but think the market's going to be tough to
Mm.
these places soon.
So, what, if anything, do you think they could do to sway that viability marker a little bit? Because that seems to be the only part where you're kind of giving them a little bit of a little bit of a dig there. Um, what do you think they could do to kind of change that?
I would say while the market is still hot, do what you can to see what you can carve out as far as distribution. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can establish a um, if you can establish some type of market demand outside of the immediate Savannah area, I think it would go a long way.
Okay, so basically, just turn a local into more of a regional kind of presence.
At least attempt to grow to that.
Yeah. Okay, that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
I mean, regional is a strong word because Sweetwater, which is Atlanta's largest craft brewery, can be considered regional because
Terrible.
I don't think they're terrible. We can talk
Oh,
about those later on in the episode, but
yeah.
anyway, um, but um, just because they don't have a presence in, like, let's say, the West Coast, you know, they do fit into the regional category, but you know, they're a large brewery too. I mean, they have a big staple in the overall Georgia market. Um,
It's true.
there's a big difference between like this in this example, Service Brewing and Sweetwater. Now, does Service Brewing need to have aspirations to be Sweetwater? I don't think so. But at the same time, to do things that model is doing, I think will elevate you to a certain degree and probably protect your presence in the overall Georgia market more so than just
Okay.
staying exclusively to where you're at in Savannah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, all
So
right. So obviously we have differing opinions on Sweetwater, but
yeah.
oh, I've never had a Sweetwater beer that I enjoyed.
I tell you, my opinion of Sweetwater changed throughout this trip that I just went on. And
Really?
I'll tell this story real quick. I don't want to monopolize today's episode, but I do think the story is worth telling. So we did spend a day at the beach at Tibby Beach, which is about 25 minutes east of Savannah. It's a really nice beach area. It just happened to be on a day where it was upwards of 100 degrees and just sweltering hot. I mean, just crazy hot. We got done at the beach. We went to a restaurant that was nearby. The restaurant had no beers on tap. Everything was in bottles. And I just needed a beer that was going to be refreshing, considering the heat that we were experiencing that day, and the fact that we had an umbrella over us that didn't give full coverage.
Ugh,
So
that's the
there was
worst.
little relief from the heat. But anyways, there was a Sweetwater bottle that they had available. That was their. It was a pineapple flavored IPA. It was between 5 and 6%, just with a hint of pineapple, and it was the absolute perfect beer for this sweltering hot day. It was it gave a sense of relief from the heat. It was cooling, and it was just perfect. And yeah, I mean, you had the perfect setting to serve that beer. I just happened to be there for it, and congratulations, Sweetwater. You're getting a kudos here on A Nice Place to Brew.
All right. All right. All right. Fair enough. So, yeah.
All right, I'm done.
Okay, cool.
George, your
All
first
right.
one.
My first one, a little bit of a gimme, but I feel like I would do us a disservice as A Nice Place to Brew if I didn't bring them up. It is Hardywood Craft Brewing down in Hardywood Park, down in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
They have been they were established in 2011, so they've been around for 8 years already, and they when we start talking about different the thing that really stands out the most is their actual product, the beers, and what they what they have to offer. Hardywood has done a really good job of having staple all year round and staple seasonals that people gravitate towards, and they've built up market demand around that. But they also do experimental brewing in their different locations. So they've got locations in Richmond, in Charlottesville, and I believe one other in two in Richmond. Sorry, two in Richmond and one in
So let me
Charlottesville.
say, I know this is,
And
I know this
yeah,
has come
so
up before. Do they actually brew at that
mhm.
location in Charlottesville?
They
Okay.
do, but not to the extent that they do in
Okay.
Hardywood. It's
Okay.
more like pilot and local kind of
Got it.
things.
Okay.
So they so good. I think when it speaks towards the viability of a brewery, you got to have a good set of staple beers and seasonals, but you also have to be willing to experiment and try different things and evolve along with that. I think a lot of breweries get stuck in one or the other of those modes. Like they only
Sure.
make the staple beers or they only experiment. And both of those things can be detrimental in the long run, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But these guys have taken a good hard look at that and have successfully been able to balance both. The other thing that they've done is kind of latched on to the barrel aging thing. That is very popular right now, and I think probably will be for a while. And a lot of their seasonal and limited release beers come from their barrel aged and reserve areas that people really like.
It's worth saying too that if you visit Hardywood, the place is wall to wall barrels. So
Yeah,
they have not
absolutely.
shied away from barrel aging by any stretch.
So on that, when we start talking about like distribution as part of that, is they have very wide distribution in the area. They are very much of a regional brewery. All over Virginia and into Maryland and North Carolina, Ohio region, you will be able to find Hardywood at different places. Obviously, the closer you get to Richmond, to their main brewery, the more you're going to be able to find it. But they do have distribution out there,
Mm-hmm.
and they are well received by a good number of people. If you start talking about their personnel, they're busy, but they are willing to talk to you about the beers. So you never get a sense of you're putting them off or anything like that. But it's not quite as personable as they necessarily could be. But again, that comes down to how busy the tap room tends to be when you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talked about the beer, talked about the personnel. What's the third one I'm missing?
You want to talk about environment?
Environment. Yes. And like Jason said, it is a brewer's brewery.
Oh,
Like you
for
walk in
sure.
there and it is wall to wall barrels, and it is there's it's a lot of an atmosphere that you understand that this is primarily a brewery. They're not trying to be anything else. That said, they do have family entertainment things at their brewery. They do have bands that come there, and they do have an event space that they work with. So again, it's kind of that balance thing that we talked about before. It's not overwhelmingly just a brewer's brewery.
Yeah.
So I give them, good marks there. So total viability, from what I understand of their financial solvency, from their distribution, from their, expansion into different areas, I see them being one of the ones that will make it into the future. Whether or not they're going to be snapped up by InBev or Miller Coors or anything like that remains to be seen. But I don't think that it's Hardywood's necessarily their intention to do that. I could see them kind of going more the realm of a Sam Adams and turning into a large craft brewery instead.
I don't feel that their viability is dependent on an acquisition like this. I
I don't
think,
either. That's what I'm
yeah,
saying. Like, I think that they could make it on their own. I
I
don't see,
agree. I
and
completely agree. They've
I've
got,
never.
I mean, they've built a loyal following in Virginia and the surrounding area, and that's what sets breweries apart in the crowded market that there is today.
Hmm.
Hardywood has carved themselves out very nicely for good reason. They've got an excellent product, and people keep coming back for it. That's to me what viability is most about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I've never gotten the vibe off of them because I've talked with a few of the principals over at Hardywood, and I've never got the vibe off of them that it's about money.
Yeah.
So in my mind and in my mantra when I'm talking about business stuff is the worst way to make money is to try to make money. And I think that,
I
you
like
know,
that.
I think they understand that, and it's not a they're trying to make the best product have that they can, have the environment that will be sustainable, and I think that it's I think that they are viable into the future.
The worst way to make money is to try to make money.
Yeah, as a
That's
finance guy,
fan-
can you tell
that's
me any part of that's wrong?
I don't disagree at all. Honestly, I think that's a profound statement, and that's hitting me on multiple levels. Yeah, very interesting. I'm going to be pondering that for a while. Well, very well said. Very well said.
So,
Well, Hardywood is actually a perfect segue to my
okay.
second brewery. To tee this up, I visited this brewery on the first part of my road trip, and I thought about Hardywood almost the entire time I was at this place. George, I know you're familiar with this brewery. I'm not. I believe that you've been here too. I'm talking
Okay.
about none other than Against the Grain Brewery and Smokehouse out of Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh yeah, I
Yes,
did stop there.
this
Yes.
place to me has a lot in common with Hardywood.
I could see that.
From the number one, they've got a very respectable product. They do have a presence, and I'll talk about that more later on. The environment, and I didn't notice it. I've been to this brewery one other time prior to this. The environment really struck me as I felt like I was at a place like Hardywood, if not right there at Hardywood within the walls. Anyways, to color this in a little bit, Against the Grain Brewery and Smokehouse is located in Louisville, Kentucky, right in the downtown area. It is conveniently located in the same building as a minor league baseball stadium.
Yeah.
It's very it's I would love to know the story about how they chose that space. But regardless, it's right in the middle of downtown. It's near all the major highways. It's hard to argue that this is a fantastic location for this brewing operation. I'll go right into it. So you walk in. They do serve food on site. They also have packaged beer that's available in mostly bombers, and you have a crowd from the local downtown Louisville area as well as from the minor league baseball stadium. I'm sure that drove part of the decision to lease that space because there's regular foot traffic for the regular baseball games throughout the summer. Totally get that.
Oh yeah.
And I'm interested to talk about the viability piece of that, but I'll go through the other parts first. First one is beer quality. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give this a 4.5.
Oh, that's
This
pretty good.
honestly, I think very highly of the product that Against the Grain makes. The standout beer to me, and I've drank this beer on multiple occasions, is a porter that they make called 35K. They have a barrel aged version of this called 70K, which I walked away with 2 bombers worth. I still have not tasted this, but I know that's a sought after barrel aged beer. So I look forward to enjoying this one. Um, Go down to staff. I'm a well. Hell, did I just lose my
Nope.
microphone? No, no. I'm
You're
sorry.
here.
I'm a little bit lower on this. I'll talk about staff and environment in the same light here. I'm less high on that portion on that part of this brewery. I'm going to try not to be too critical, but at the same time, I'm not real high on this. This place has a classic hipster craft brewery vibe.
Cool.
Um, it's less friendly than it is just you know here we are, and I know that comes off a little bit harsh, and I don't completely mean it to be, but when
No, but I
I
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, when I compare this to service brewing, which I thought was a very, very warm environment and a place I wanted to spend time at and enjoy the product, I didn't have this feeling at against the grain quite as much. So I gave staff a 3.5 and environment is 3 for that very reason. Um, the feeling of the space that they're in is rustic. They did have tables, but they were all old.
Like good
Yeah,
old or
yeah,
not
right on.
well
I'd
tended
say
old.
a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, not stand out nice, but not stand out like ooh. I don't want to sit here either. Somewhere right in between there. So that's my take on that. I'll go down to viability. Despite the staff and environment points that I just gave, I gave the viability of 4.5, in line with the beer
Hmm.
quality.
Okay.
And I feel strongly about this. And here's where a lot of this stands. Number one, the beer quality is very high grade. I mentioned that before about the 35K, and also this is a large part of what it comes down to as well. We live, or I should say, I live here in Chicago, Illinois, which is roughly 250 miles away from Louisville. Against the Grain is fairly well known here in Illinois, 250 miles away. That
Mm-hmm.
says something.
Mm-hmm.
There's another major city between these two areas. Indianapolis is right smack dab between Chicago and Louisville. So there's a lot of different breweries that are available to people in the Chicagoland and Indiana area. The fact that people here know Against the Grain says a lot. The fact that their beers are sought after here as well says even more.
It's
I
true.
believe that that's the ultimate test right now in this market of viability. So 4.5, I think, is very appropriate.
I would agree with you on those respects outside of the location itself. Now, what I'm wondering is, the impression I got when I was at the location itself was the staff and environment was more geared towards the restaurant than it was the beer. The beer felt like a secondary piece to that. Did you get the
That is
same
true.
impression?
I definitely did.
Yeah. And so I think that kind of like when I asked questions about the beer itself, they didn't know the answers.
Yeah,
But you could ask about the brisket and they know all the answers to that. So
very, very true.
yeah.
I'll give one other good point to this place, and I can't talk about this for all these because not all of them serve food, but the food at Against the Grain is awesome.
Oh, it
I
is
mean,
very good.
the smoked brisket sandwich is fantastic. If you're there, by all means, give the food a try. It's really good.
And that goes back to that kind of balance thing again. Like I think Against the Grain, when you're talking about the different products that they have, they've balanced that very well. That the food is very good and the beer is very good.
Yeah,
Other examples of kind of brew house restaurants, like the one down the street from where I used to live, Emmett's. That can't always be said. You know.
yeah. I didn't think of those in the same context, but that's a fair point. I mean, Emmett's is catering exclusively to their restaurant crowd.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I think
yes. And even then, I think sometimes the beer is better than the food.
I 100% agree the beer is better than the food.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think they would be comfortable with that.
I think they would be too.
I
That's
think
what I'm
they take
saying.
I think
Yeah.
they take more pride in their beer than they do their food. I feel like they have food available to allow them for the people to stick around longer and order more beer. And that's fine.
Yeah. And you say that, and I feel like at the restaurant of Against the Grain is kind of the opposite. They have the beer in order to service the food. Like bring people in to have the food. That's kind of how I feel about it. But
Okay.
that might be
That's interesting. I did not think about it like that, but that's a fair point.
yeah. But I agree with your viability perspective, even if especially if you include the restaurant portion of that, because they do a really good business there,
Oh,
and
sure.
and the distribution is good and everything. So they have, I think it's a good, good. I think you're on the money there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
hmm
All right. Numero dos.
Yeah, and actually, I found a third one. just one I want to talk about, but this one is kind of a tale of two breweries.
Okay.
So you have been to, I think, one of these. I don't think you've been to the other one, up in Culpeper, which is a little town in amongst other little towns where I live, and it's just a kind of northwest of me a little bit.
Okay.
And there's two breweries up there. They're literally a block apart from each other. And one is called Far Gone and the other's called Beer Hound.
Okay.
And the reason why I kind of put them in the same breath is that the town's not big enough, I think, to support two breweries, especially two craft breweries like this with that purely focus on the beer. There's no restaurant in them. It's just purely the beer.
Do you know offhand the population of the town?
I don't.
No.
Um, but if you wouldn't mind, look it up. I'll keep going here.
Sure. What was the name of the town again?
Culpeper.
Oh, Culpeper. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So there's two, like I said, there's two breweries in there, and Far Gone is owned by this guy named Steve Gone, and he is the sole brewer, owner, proprietor. He has a wait staff, but everything else is run by him. And he has a small, I believe it to be a 3-barrel system that he works from with currently 2 or 3 fermenters. So it's a very small setup in there. It would almost qualify as I believe, a nano brewery in some people's minds.
Yeah.
And but what he has done is he's hyper focused on the the flagship beers that he has. He has them all the time. He does not, vary from them very often, and he's hyper focused on that in order to serve his current market in the area. And he's done well with that. Those beers are of good quality, and they are consistent. But I fear that if he doesn't start to do some variation, do more seasonals and things like that, that he's not that the beers are going to start to suffer in that, because there's not going to be enough variation to keep the people.
Mm-hmm. So to answer the question we posed earlier, the population of Culpeper, Virginia, is 16,379.
Okay.
And I agree with your assessment completely. I do. With that kind of population, having two small breweries in that same town is definitely crowded.
Right. So then we go over to Beer Hound, who is, right outside of a commuter rail train station. Amtrak and Mark, I believe, go right into there. And it's a very popular place for people to load and offload for going to DC and Baltimore and those kinds of places. So it's right outside the train station.
Okay.
So you'd think it would be a good location for them to have a lot of really good business and things, but unfortunately it's not the case. And I think it comes down to their beers have been homebrew grade at a larger scale. And that's been the issue that they've had. I've gone into Beer Hound a number of times, and they are not, to where I think, they should be for a professional brewery. And they're just missing that next step that would make them a true professional brewery when it comes to their beers and stuff.
Okay.
Not to mention the fact in recent memory, they've had some personnel issues with their brewers and things. And actually, Steve over at Far Gone has been helping them out and such. So that is a whole thing in the area. But those guys are having trouble with the beer quality and consistency, especially the consistency, to make a go of it there. When you talk about personnel, Steve and his waitstaff over at Far Gone, extremely personable, busy, but extremely personable and willing to talk to you about the beers. Steve is there most of the time, and he is willing to talk to you about the beers. He's shared recipes with the brew club, and he's very open about what he does and everything. So that's very nice. When you talk about Beer Hound, it's kind of the opposite. Is they're kind of very closed off about their process and everything. Their staff just kind of seems like they don't want to be there, and it's kind of not great from a environment personnel kind of perspective. Um, yeah, so I mean that kind of brings me down to the viability, and this is where things get tricky. As you can tell from what I'm talking about here, I don't see Beer Hound surviving. And the ironic part is they have some distribution. They're in some, restaurants and grocery stores and things like that. But I think they kind of went too big too quickly. And that's the problem that they have. They needed to develop their consistency. They needed to develop their beers and to be a tap house in that prime location for a little while before they went into the distribution. And I feel like they did that backwards.
God.
Fargon has the opposite problem. They have very limited distribution and a very small setup, and I think they have some expansion issues. I know he's been wanting to expand for quite some time, and I really hope he can. I think if he can, and he can upgrade his equipment, he can upgrade his space a little bit, then he's got a really good chance at being viable for some years to come and to engage in more distribution and such. But I think it's really going to take some investment, and it's going to take some, putting himself out there a little bit to get that done and get that expansion set up to where he needs to be. So that's kind of my take of the Culpeper brew scene. Is it's a little tenuous at the moment.
There's a couple of things that come to mind. Number one, I like what you're saying about that second guy.
About Fargon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he seems. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of parallels with like the things that you and I are doing. I feel like he's a guy that just, grew above a home brewer, believed in what he was doing enough to open up his own place, but he's still in the process of graduating to a small business owner from a home brewer. Is that a fair assessment?
I don't know if that's a fair assessment. And he's got a very viable, very strong small business. What he's stuck in is that, kind of financial rut of, not that you always have to be growing or you're dying, not that old ridiculous trope, but at the same point he's at a plateau where he needs to get to the next summit to grow. Does that make sense?
And the next summit is financial, you're saying, right?
Absolutely. It's financial. Yeah.
I think there's something to be said that's a significant piece of what it takes to when you're making a step from a home brewer to a small business owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it wasn't financial, you and I would have done it years ago.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. No, I think based on our knowledge, for the most part, I think we're equipped mentally and based knowledge wise to make the jump.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that being a piece of it, I do think that that plays very significantly into viability because, again, back to my earlier point, I like the guy just from I've never met him before, but I like the story that you're describing.
It's a great story and it's a great atmosphere and it's a great environment, but
I'm sure the community likes him too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, community loves him and he's well frequented by the locals and such, so he's got a good business model there, but I just worry that especially if he were to have stronger competition. Let's say Beer Hound were to be taken over by a better brewer, brewer, and they started producing better beers, or if they went out and another brewery came in there and they were a markedly better brewery, I think he would have some issues.
Agreed. That is an interesting. That's an interesting tale between two breweries in a small area, catering to a relatively small market.
Yeah.
There in Culpeper, Virginia. there's certainly hundreds, if not thousands, of breweries throughout the country that fit that same description.
Yeah, I agree. And some of them are going to figure out how to get that investment to get going. And I know, his initial investment was partially, personal, and I assume probably some business loans and things, but
Yeah.
he has a very successful mug club situation going, to where if you go into, here, I can actually show it to you.
Wait, is this that place that had all those silver mugs hanging
Uh-huh.
on the wall? Oh, yeah. I remember this place.
Yeah, yeah. So here,
I
yeah,
think I had a
here, let me
stout
show you.
there, if I remember correctly.
I think you did. Yeah. How do I
Yeah.
share my screen on here?
You know what? Can you text it to me? I'd hate to.
Okay. Do you
Yeah.
see that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So you see all those mugs lining the roof there?
I remember this well.
Yeah. There's more now. I mean,
I tell you,
it's
did he upgrade this place recently? I mean, that the place looks great. And honestly, this picture is nicer than what I remember this place as.
you know um no. I mean, this is pretty much what it looks like.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
So
good for
yeah.
him.
But yeah, so that's it, and he's got a very successful mug club situation going on that has I know been a good infusion, kind of community engagement kind of thing. But yeah, it's just all about that next summit, the next expansion.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So
On to the next one.
absolutely.
All right. So my next one is a small brewery as well. Um, like Against the Grain, they serve food, but that's pretty much where the comparison stops because it's a whole different environment, and a whole different brewery. I visited a brewery for the first time in the Chicago neighborhood of Pilsen within the last month. And just to paint the picture a little bit, I was in the neighborhood on a weeknight for a concert, and I wanted a place where I could have a beer and also have some food. And I came across and I visited a place in the neighborhood called a Lulu Brewery and Pub.
Hang on 1 second. Did you say an area called Pilsen?
Pilsen
Like
is the neighborhood.
like 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 the beer style Pilsen?
Yeah, I don't know if they purposely stole the name, but yes.
Okay,
Pil-
all right.
Pilsen is a neighborhood between um, if you know where the University of Illinois at Chicago is,
Yeah.
quote parentheses my alma mater.
Mm,
It's only about a mile or two south southwest of that neighborhood.
okay.
So kind of between UIC and Chinatown.
Oh, okay. I know that area.
Kind
Yeah.
of picture it like that.
All
Anyways,
right. So you said the place called Lulu?
a Lulu. Anyways, Pilsen is an up and coming area. It's built up pretty noticeably over the last 10 plus years. It's grown into a pretty nice area. There's some main street areas with businesses and a new concert hall and more than just one brewery. But this place just happened to have food, so magically I ended up there. So a Lulu brewery is very, very, very small. They are set up to have a bar area which seats maybe a dozen people, and that's probably being generous. They have also about 6 different picnic style tables arranged around a wall, and there's a window that kind of goes in and out from a patio area. The place is putting mildly cramped, which is not unusual for many urban environments, especially in
Hmm.
Chicago, where real estate is limited and spaces for businesses and for homes is not unusual to be very small. So be know that before you're going in that if you're a little claustrophobic, you're not going to be real comfortable with this place.
Mm.
But anyways, um, All the beer that they serve is made there on site. And going through the ratings, I gave the beer quality a 4. I had a porter there that was very good, very good. They had I want to say several different other selections. I don't remember offhand just how many tap offerings they had. It was much more. I mean, it was much more than say just 4 or 5. I would venture to say it was probably closer to a dozen. And
That's
yeah,
sizable.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Staff and environment, the scores suffer for the reason of just the place being small and being where it is. It was just too small to be comfortable, and that plays in for me. Call that personal taste, but I can't
So
ignore that.
that's the environment, but how was the staff? Were they personable?
Staff was okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, fairly friendly, overly friendly. I mean, is it something to write specifically good notes about? Not exactly. So just kind of mid range.
Okay.
So I gave the staff a 3. I gave the environment a 2.
Hmm.
Viability is an interesting conversation with this. I have a score marked, but I'm going to kind of talk through this, and I may be changing my own mind as I say this. This is a brewery a lot like Amit's that you described earlier, George, about being there to cater to not only the neighborhood but also the restaurant that they have there on site. The brewery, the beer at this place was good. The food was kind of a little more than sandwiches. Um, Chicago obviously is a very populated, very um, uh, crowded city. Excuse me. And the options available to the consumer for craft beer in Chicago is very, very large.
True.
These types of breweries are too small to be on the radar of, say, InBev or Miller Coors. An acquisition of a Lulu brewery is just simply not in the cards. So the question becomes, is their presence strong enough in the neighborhood to keep them around? I view this environment as being very difficult for these types of breweries for many of the same reasons that I described earlier when I talked about service brewing in Savannah. My rating for this, and for the moment I'm standing by this, is a 2.
Were you considering going up or even
Yeah,
farther down?
yeah, mostly because of number one, the beer quality, and then number two, the neighborhood is doing well right now. And
Okay.
there's things to be said about both those points, but competition still rules, and the restaurant market is insanely competitive. The
Mm,
rate of business closures for restaurants, I don't know what the percentage is offhand, but it is extremely, extremely high.
yeah.
So I believe there's enough factors working against them that the viability is just, it keeps me from giving a higher ranking.
Yeah, I could see that. I was going to ask the question of, do you think they could turn into eventually say that the brewery part of it will become defunct and they just turn into a sandwich shop? But in that
I don't know if
area, they'd
that's
have to be a
impossible.
really good sandwich shop, wouldn't they?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But you think about that from a financial level. Do you sell off all the brewery equipment
Hmm.
and have enough money to upgrade the restaurant? Is that what you do?
I mean, it would be possible. That brewery equipment's not cheap. I mean, it
It's
would be a
no, I know it's not.
yeah. So, yeah. So in that area, I could see why your viability rating is as low as it is
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So
All right.
a Lulu Brewery and Pub out of the Pilsen neighborhood here in Chicago.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So I got one more.
All right.
Yeah. So I remembered about this one and I wanted to talk about it because it kind of reminded me of another brewery that we know and love.
Okay.
It's called, well, the one I went to is in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is a nice area, well known for its breweries, wineries, meaderies, you know, insert thing, Breweries, is all there. And the
Reese.
Breweries, yeah. Uh, but what this was called the Friendly Fermenter. And of all the breweries in town there, I chose this one because it is a homebrew shop slash brewery in the area, and it's one of the only homebrew shops in the area. So kind of, I had memories of Brewworks and the
Yeah.
Workforce,
Yeah.
brewery that we used to frequent out in Chicago. I imagine you still do. And when I went, when I went in there, it was kind of a dual purpose. I wanted to pick up some equipment and ingredients for this weekend, which I'll talk about in a bit here.
All right.
And I was kind of touring the different breweries in the area. So I had their beers, and I will say their beers, they could use a little bit of work. Some of them were really good. Some of them were okay. So I give them probably about a 3.5 on their beer. I will say that when it was good, it was very good. Like, they had a strawberry wheat where they actually didn't use extract, didn't go the easy route. They put real strawberries in, strawberry puree, and they actually did a Mug Club special small batch where they did the strawberry puree and then they put kiwi, so it was a strawberry kiwi wheat beer. And she said she was tapping the strawberry kiwi, you could actually see like little kiwi seeds and things coming through.
Oh.
Like, it was
Was it a
real
second?
ingredients.
Was it a secondary edition? Is that where it was
I think so. Yeah, on
for
both
the
of them.
fruit? Okay.
Yeah. So, and she showed me their breweries. I think it was a 5 barrel with 4 or 5 fermenters, so decently sized. And they are, so the beers were good plus, kind of that 3.5 in there. They could use a little work in there. The personnel, there's only one person there. I was there midday on a Sunday, so not exactly the busy time. There was one person there, and she was very personable. Not If you asked her about the beers and things, she would answer some questions, but wasn't the brewer,
Got
so you
it.
couldn't answer
Okay.
everything. Um, and the environment, you walk in and along the right hand side, it's just lined with different beer brewing equipment and grains and everything you would expect to find in a homebrew shop. And then there was tables, little like high top tables with many frisbee golf things on the tables. So it was just a fun atmosphere. It was small. It was in the basement of a building, and so as far as like environment and atmosphere, it was very welcoming and
So in the
very
basement of a
personable.
building, there was a brewery and an ingredient store.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Hmm. And then when you take all of that and you kind of turn it into a viability question, I would give them a strong chance at success in the future. I see them kind of taking the same tactic as Workforce in their brewery, using the ingredient store as a primary source of income and financial stability, and growing the beer market and the brewery aspect of it as they go, and kind of taking their time with that and building that up. If they're able to fine tune their brewing and making sure, one of the things was we had a coffee stout. And I thought they overbalanced the coffee a little bit. There was too much presence of coffee,
Easy to do that.
and it's super easy to do
Yeah.
that, and that just takes fine tuning. And the other thing was the carbonation was low.
Okay.
In a stout, typically the carbonation is lower, but the carbonation was low in this, and that's just, again, all about fine tuning and growth. And they're only 2 years old at this point. Actually, they were established sometime in 2017, so they may
Did you
even
see
be
their
like a year and a
Did you
half.
see their brewery setup?
I did.
You did. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. So, like I said, I
I mean,
think it
big
was a five
tanks,
barrel.
big. Okay, 5 barrel. Okay, all right. It's all right.
Yeah. So,
So
I mean, yeah, good size, But again, it's going to be one of those things when we're talking about the viability aspect and that summit, of growth. They're gonna hit a limit with the
yeah,
space that they have,
yeah,
and
hundred
that could
percent.
be a limiting factor. They're eventually going to have to move out of that basement and into a bigger area. And maybe what happens is kind of like what Workforce did: is the new area becomes the brewery and the old area becomes the homebrew shop, and or
Yeah,
stays the homebrew shop, and they expand that. I don't know, but it gives them some options there.
yeah. I'm certainly
Yeah,
pulling for these guys. Your parallels with Workforce seem right on. Because
yeah, yeah,
how I mean, how long did Workforce operate that exact same way? They brewed and had ingredients within, you know, 2,000 square feet, or I don't know what that space was. Their tap room was a stand up bar that fit maybe 16 people comfortably, and was always busting
yeah.
at the seams until they acquired that new space.
Which I haven't even
So
seen yet. Next time I'm out there, we got to run down there and take a look at that.
it's super nice, super
Yeah.
nice. You'll be very impressed. Um, yeah, I keep seeing those parallels just right throughout your whole description of this place.
And as did I. I see
That
this
that
as a
that leads
sorry.
me to be cheering for these guys.
Yeah, me too. And I see these guys as a really young version of Brewworks. And so it's one of those things that if they can keep going, if they can have the sustainability, they've got a good
Hmm.
model that they can go, especially considering the other homebrew shop in the area closed down. So now they have
Oh,
right now they're seeing an influx of new customers, new revenue, and everything like that. So yeah,
what's the name of the place again?
the friendly fermenter.
The Friendly Fermenter.
Yes, right in the heart of, well, I think it's the heart of Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is a very nice area just on the other side of the Shenandoah National Park.
Did they have packaged beer?
Well, they had crowlers, and they would fill
Okay, all right.
growlers for you.
Okay, all right, all right.
Yeah, they definitely had a crowler machine though. Um, as far as packaged, like prepackaged beer, I don't think they did.
Okay. All right. Well, nevertheless, if you go in there and if you want to take some home with you, they have the ability to.
Yes,
Obviously,
absolutely.
those crowlers have become a staple at most small breweries throughout the country.
And it's
But
funny that I sent you a picture of one of them. I don't think you realized it was from them, but
yeah.
the reason I sent Jason a picture is the beer was called Ruin Jason,
Oh
and it was
yes.
a double IPA. Yeah, I don't know the story behind that, but it was called Ruin Jason.
No, you're
So
right. I did not draw that parallel. That picture was
yeah,
hilarious. All right. Very
yeah,
good. I think that caps off our other breweries reviewed. This was
it
great.
does. It was, yeah. So like I said, I was, I picked up some ingredients, and so I was kind of leads into my next question. We have the holiday today. Can kind of get some things to maybe get a starter going. Are you brewing anything this weekend?
I am not. I
You are
I'm in
not.
a
Okay.
position where I have 4 kegs, all of which are mostly full. And my project is with the chest freezer that I just acquired. So
Okay.
before I brew anything new, I need to build a collar, and I intend to have 4 taps available to me here in my garage. So that's gonna take priority before any new brew day.
Okay, that's
Um,
fair.
what is on the calendar is I do need to have a double IPA brewed and finished by the end of August for a specific event.
Okay, is that
So
another JBG competition?
no, it's not something unrelated.
Oh, okay.
So just with timing, that is most likely going to be my next brew day. So late July, maybe at the very latest, the first weekend of August. So that's probably what my brewing calendar is going to look like.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
What about you? Are you
well,
brewing this weekend?
I
Yes. Oh,
am.
you've got you've got
Yeah.
that one you talked about earlier.
Yeah, I'm redoing the APA that we did. I was not happy with my results, as you guys probably heard on the last show that we did. So I'm redoing it, and I'm redoing it with some two row from a local brewery that they grew on site and sent out to be malted.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up some caramel 10 and carapils to add in there. And so I'm kicking up the pretty much everything. I'm kicking up the IBUs a little bit. I'm kicking up the alcohol percentage.
Ah, okay, all right. So
Yeah,
the recipe is gonna be different as well.
not totally, but it is going to be a little bit different. It's just going to be a little
Okay,
heavier.
okay.
Um, yeah, so it's going to be 6.5, 7% somewhere in there,
Oh,
and
is
it's
it even within the APA style guidelines?
uh no, but
All
uh,
right, you're being honest about it. Okay, I
called it
respect that.
a 1.5. It's not quite a double APA, but a 1.5
I was
APA.
gonna say, is it Imperial APA? Is that even a thing? I don't
I
even
don't think
know.
it is. So no, I'm not sticking to guidelines on that. I mean, we did that, and I think I understand what about the style that I wanted to bring out. So now I'm kind of riffing on it a little bit.
Okay, okay,
Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna do. I'm kicking that up. So but the final gravity is still intended to be 10, 12. So it should still be relatively dry.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
I'd love to do a side by side with mine, and that kind of motivates me to potentially redo mine. But to be honest, I think on our last show I talked to you about my attempts to save the diacetyl problem
hmm
from mine. The keg is cool once again, so I still have not had the chance to taste it post fix.
Oh, that's right.
So I wonder what the problem is.
You warmed up the keg to try
Because
to bleed off some of the diacetyl.
well, that and at the same time my refrigeration broke.
Oh,
So
right. Yes.
yeah. So now that I have a chest freezer, now I have cold kegs again,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
obviously my ability was limited prior to that.
L- Let me
I,
ask you that.
honestly, I'll give you a review of that in the next couple of days because I'm gonna have to taste that and see, hey, problem solved, or did that not quite work out? We'll see.
Okay. So let me ask you that question. So you hooked up your Inkbird to your chest freezer, right?
Yes, sir.
What do you keep in your temperature at on that?
39.
39. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. I currently have mine sitting at 34.
Okay. All right. Near freezing temps. Okay. All right.
And the primary reason for that is the top of the keg is going to be a few degrees warmer than the bottom with the position of the temperature probe that I have. Um,
Okay.
so I'm probably sitting somewhere 36 at the top of the chest freezer. And I didn't want it to be too warm, so I've been playing with that a little bit, and I found for serving temperature in here, for the types of beers that I have in there right now, 34 is about the right place to be.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I'll probably be playing around with my temperature a little bit too. Obviously, there's a couple different schools of thought as far as serving temps for a kegerator like we're describing.
hmm
So, and I'm kind of experiencing this for the first time. So, my first order of business is, of course, complete. I have now a home for my kegs, and at least I can keep them cool. So,
The other thing I would suggest, find a good way, 'cause this is one of the things that even with two taps, I've been struggling with this sometimes, is remembering which beer is which tap. You know,
you know what I intend to do?
what's that?
I want to buy a whiteboard
Okay.
and put that on my garage wall.
The other thing that I was going to recommend is you can get like those sticker whiteboards that you can put right on the not ceiling, but the top of the the cover.
So
That's the word I'm looking for.
to
Right on the
to
cover.
to write directly on the cover.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that could work too.
Yeah,
I,
and then
I
you could
wouldn't be
write
against
like,
doing that if it erases off cleanly. Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
yeah, I've been looking at that. You can also get like chalk. You can do chalkboard in a similar way.
Yeah,
So either way, you can do that. But yeah,
cool.
yeah. So,
Ready for a trivia question?
oh yeah, okay. I didn't know if
Yeah,
you're gonna have
I
one. Go
do.
ahead.
I do. All right. All right. No backstory with this. I was tempted to save this question for Labor Day because it's more specific to labor than it is Independence Day, but here it is. The
Okay.
question is, how many American jobs does the beer industry support? And I do have four choices. Just
Okay.
ponder
Good.
that for a second. How many American jobs does the beer industry support? Is it A, 2.7 million, B, 2.2 million, C, 1.5 million, or D, 3.2 million? Now, let's put this into perspective real quick. The
Okay.
population of the United States is between 250 and 300 million. So, just based on those four options, we're talking about the millions of jobs that are created just based on beer consumption here in the US, which is an interesting
Yeah.
scope.
Whoever
So,
thought prohibition was a good idea?
these numbers kind of tell the tale.
Yeah. I'm gonna say 2.2.
You are correct, sir. Well done.
Oh wow.
2.2 million jobs that the beer industry supports.
Yeah.
So just think about that on this Independence Day. If you're drinking a cold beer, you're supporting good American jobs.
So
And
long as it's
what's
not like
and
a
what's not
Heineken.
and what's not to be happy about that.
That's true.
So raise a glass on this July 4th. Cheers. Cheers to all you. Okay, one last fact in line
Hmm?
with this trivia question, and the fact here is about your living state of Virginia.
Okay.
So this is another economic fact, like the jobs question that I just asked you. The number of permitted breweries throughout Virginia is 238.
Wow, I thought it'd be more, to be honest.
238 permitted breweries in the state of Virginia. These breweries contribute more than, get ready for this, $9.35 billion annually to Virginia's economy.
Wow. Yeah. There's some big ones. There's some
Yeah.
big breweries in the area.
Well, Stone's got a production facility there.
Yeah.
What are the other big players within the state? I mean,
A lot of them are
Hardywood, excluding Hardywood, which of course we know about.
sure. I mean, there's some other large regional ones like Devil's Backbone and Brothers, and I'm not even sure if like cideries are included in that, but like Bold Rock
Yeah.
is a big one that's in the area. But when you think about it, the sorry, when it comes to the different regions, Virginia is a distant but still second in place for when you compare it to California. Like California has the biggest wine and I think beer general liquor industry in the country. Number two, Virginia, and that is so it's not surprising that that contributes that much to the economy.
Yeah. And I think wineries are lending a bulk of that because I know we've talked about this in the past. The
Yeah,
volume of wineries in Virginia is surprisingly high.
ginormous. Yeah. So, hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So, I've been considering finding a way to do this, and I think Hardywood is doing one relatively soon. Have you ever done a vertical?
Help me out here.
Okay, sorry. It was a relatively new term for me too, but basically, it's a brewery has the same beer from different years. and it's usually a bigger beer. And
Oh.
so, like, what's the one in Indiana that annoys the crap out of me? Um,
Three Floyds.
yes, Three Floyds. Like you
Okay.
do a vertical of Dark Lord, and drink
Oh, okay, okay.
year after year after year after year, and usually there's like a dozen of them or something, or however long it's been around. Have you ever done one of them?
No, I have not. And to be
Yeah.
honest with you, um, this is an interesting topic, but here's my take on it. Um, Being that I'm operating on a very manual home brewing setup, I would be very doubtful that a beer of mine would survive well 12 months after brewing.
Oh no, I agree. So I mean, this is you go to a professional brewery and you do a vertical there. So like you would do
Oh,
a vertical of Dark Lord or what have you,
you mean okay?
year over year.
Okay, so do you mean to taste
Yeah.
side by side? Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So they have like eight or a
Okay,
dozen,
okay,
from dating back to say, you know, 2007 to now.
okay. All right.
One from each year.
I think the closest I could come to that would be one beer that I make it a point to purchase every year is KBS, the Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout from
Right.
Founders.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about it on previous shows. It's a fantastic beer. I look forward to it every year. Um, that's about as close as I can come to that.
Yeah.
I had to be honest with you, I have a 4-pack from this year, and I've not broken into a single one yet.
Huh.
Now, I've part of that is because I happened to find myself in the early days of the release, and I got to try it on tap, which was quite a treat. Having KBS on tap is pretty sweet.
Sure.
Um, but if your question is specifically, have I ever opened up two bottles side by side, like 2018 versus 2017? No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know
I
some.
do think KBS is as close as I've come to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look around because I know that some breweries will do that because they'll reserve some of the beer for year over year.
Metal
Especially
Monkey has done that. I know that for a
they
fact.
have. So I wonder if Metal
Yeah.
Monkey would ever do a vertical. So
Do they plan like special events around this?
they do, or they bring in
Oh,
insiders like um, the other podcasts that we've been trying to coordinate with recently did a vertical and and sampled. I don't remember how many different ones, but
from a brewery in New York?
from brewery in New York. Yep.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Okay.
So yeah,
Huh. You taught me something new here. Honestly, I don't think I've ever heard that term before.
I don't think it's not the most popular thing in the world because it's kind of hit or miss, as you can imagine.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
because sometimes beer ages like fine vinegar.
That is 100% true. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I'm not going to out who the brewery was, but I did recently just have to dump a 4-pack of purchased beer
Oof,
just
that's
based on that
rough.
fact. And honestly, like it wasn't even sitting around that long. I mean,
Mm.
3 or 4 months, and it was sour as hell.
Oh, that's a bummer. That should
Uh,
have lasted longer than that.
I'll tell you off
Okay.
air who it was.
All right.
So, but yeah, but listen, it happens. It
Yeah. Oh, for
happens,
sure.
and
Yeah.
in beer, you know, you know, beer sticking around through long periods of time. There's certain ones that do it better than others.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of different factors that play into it. So
I would agree with that. Yeah.
just kind of is what it is.
All right. Well, the good news is we didn't have any breweries that we necessarily said will be dead in a week.
No,
We're kind of down on a few, but that's. I think the industry is strong at the moment.
it is. I think
Yeah.
we're still maintaining our clean lyrics label through this episode. There's been no
Damn
4-letter words.
it.
Haven't had a reason to. To your point, George. Yes, we didn't slam any breweries on this episode.
Yeah.
So honestly, we should do more episodes like this. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this felt really good. I don't know what the proper time lapse between other breweries reviewed should be. We can talk about this, but I would be totally open to making this a semi-regular thing.
I think, as we have ones to talk about, I think we should resurrect the topic and go through it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. So
All right.
happy July 4th, everyone.
Everyone, absolutely, yes.
Exactly. So have a beer today and support your good 2.2 million American jobs that the beer industry creates here in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we raise a glass here, the camera, it takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers.
Cheers.